Hey everybody, we're back. And in this one, we are looking at creating our first script that we are going to use to control our player in this game that we have started. If you're following right along here, I left it with the play mode on, so just unclick that. If you took a break or went for a coffee, or maybe you're just starting from this video, just make sure you're back in your default scene here. This one's going to be fun because what we're going to actually do is we're going to create a script that will allow us to control a player. Okay, and depending on the game that we want to make, whether it's like a top-down or a platformer or even a first-person shooter, whatever it is that we are creating, it doesn't have to be a first-person shooter, it could just be a first-person game. We would set this up slightly different. But for sake of the tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to create a game controller that will actually allow us to control an object within our scene as we would an actual player. We're going to use the WASD keys because those are the most common, and we're going to set up a script to do that. It doesn't matter which object you pick, by the way. You'll see it really doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is down here, we're going to get out of our material view. We're going to go back to assets so that we can see our folders again. And I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to right click and create a folder. And I'm going to call this folder scripts. Okay, so this folder is called scripts. And scripts is going to hold all of our coding files that we're going to create. And it becomes, honestly, your most important folder in a big game. As much as I would love to say you don't have to code and it does it for you, you have to code and you have to do it. You can only get so far without code. So let's go into scripts, and we are going to create our first script. And I'm going to do my best to explain some of the concepts here. And if you are familiar with programming languages, some of the concepts are going to make sense already. Things like variables and if statements and all the rest of it, arrays and loops and all that stuff. But if it's your first time, getting into coding, pay close attention, maybe do a little research on your own just so you know what we're talking about here, because coding is very important in game development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a C# script. Okay, sorry, I don't know why I was reading it, but I wasn't saying it. So I'm going to go create C# script. And let's give it a name. You have to give it a name right away. I'm going to call it move controls. Okay, move controls, and then hit enter or return, and it will create a script for us. Okay, so there it is. Now it gives us a little preview of what the script is, and it creates what I would call like a boilerplate code, basically a template for us to start with. But in order to actually edit this file, in order to actually edit this script, we're going to have to double click it. And depending on the program you set up in my first video, either Visual Studio will take over, or Dreamweaver, or whatever program you set as your coding program where you're going to do your code. Now, the reason I really like Visual Studio is because it attaches directly to Unity. It allows you to look at all your sort of components in one. Not all the programs do that. But in Visual Studio, since that's what I'll be doing or using, this is how it looks. Again, I've got dark mode on, but you get the idea. And you'll notice that what Unity will do is it will set up a generic template for us to start with. Okay, so in order for Unity to work sort of the way that it should, it has to use these libraries of, commands that Unity understands. So in this case, we're using the Unity engine. That's the one that's highlighted here, but we've also got the system generic collections and the system collections as well. Now, this is where it starts to get a little confusing. When we get into here, we are declaring our class, and this class is public, which means it's going to be shared. It has to have the name that we called this file. So remember, I called it move controls. If this gets changed at any point in time, you also have to change the name of your file, because this is how Unity links to this file, okay, from this class that we're creating. And you can see that it is within something called MonoBehavior, and that is just the way that C# works with Unity. It all derives from a single class called MonoBehavior. So don't remove this, don't change this. This is something that it's your base class that Unity scripts derive from, as it tells you in the little tooltip that comes up. Now, by default, it's got two methods that are set up by default. The first one is start, and the other one's update. They're both very important, okay, depending on the script that you're writing. Start is something that's going to run once, basically when the first frame of this game or whatever loads. It's going to run whatever's in start one time, whereas update is going to run continuously every time, once per frame, every frame that this game runs for. So think about that. If you want to set up objects with certain values or whatever, it's going to happen once in the start. If you want it to run constantly and constantly be checking for things, it's going to go into update. Okay, very important. In this case, we're actually going to get rid of the start. We don't need it. All right, and again, I'm not going to go into the basics of code because I'm hoping you already know this, but this is a comment. It doesn't matter whether it's there or not, but we are going to get rid of this method and just have it start with the update instead. And what I want to do is I want to create a variable. Sorry, not a variable. I want to create, getting confused. I do want to create a variable. And it's going to be a public variable that I can use within the game, possibly in multiple locations later on, we'll see. And I'm going to first type public because I want it to be used in various places. And this type of variable is a float. And if you have taken any sort of programming, a float is a type of variable that is a number that can have decimal places. All right, that's the easiest way I can explain it. So if you, let's say you take the value of pi, it's got decimal places after, so it would be a float. If it was just a whole number, it would be an int. It'd be an integer, all right? But we're using float here, okay? And next we have to declare the name of the variable. And for this one, you can give it whatever name you want, as long as it doesn't conflict with one of the commands within C#. I'm going to call it player speed. And remember to have good etiquette and to capitalize the second word. That's just good etiquette. Lowercase, what do they call that? Camel text, right? And because it's a float, we are going to assign it a number. I'm going to say equals, let's say 2. And since it's a float, let's put 0.5. And this is a weird thing that you have to do with C#. When you define a float, even though we are telling C# that it is a float, remember that a float is a number that has a decimal place. We have to put an F, all right, which tells it is a float value. Every line of code ends with a semicolon. Make sure you add it. So what we've done right now is we've created a variable called player speed. It's a float. and it has a value of 2.5 right now. Let's go down into the update. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to watch for keys to be pressed on the keyboard so we can check to see if this object is actually being controlled in the game. So let's do an if statement, and we're watching for input dot get key. Oops. I hate when it does that. It tries to finish my line for me. Get key. And the next we're going to put in a bracket like that. And we're going to put key code dot whatever character we want it to look for on our keyboard. And it has to be capitalized. So it's going to be A in this case. So we're looking for what is going to happen basically if we press A. So if input gets the key with key code A, what's going to happen below? We have to open up a bracket there for what is going to happen. All right, if A is pressed. And now remember, guys, this is all happening within update, which means it's being checked constantly. So it's like a game loop that's running all the time. All right, and so if A is pressed, let's say that we are going to transform, translate. So we are transforming this object in some way. And by the way, this is going to apply to whatever object this script is attached to. Vector 3, which, to be totally honest, I don't have a very good explanation. It says representation of 3D vectors and points. If you were making a 2D game, you would use vector 2, which is a representation of 2D points. But we're making a 3D game, so we're going to put vector 3 dot left, because A is our left movement, multiplied by our player speed. Okay, so let me explain what's going on here. We can close that off. So if the A key is pressed, we are telling it to transform this object to move in the left direction within 3D space, multiplied by whatever player speed is set to. So if we want the object to move faster later, we can actually change player speed to whatever we want. And I'm going to show you what the nice thing about public variables. They have a really nice feature within Unity that we can change it on the fly. Okay. One thing we could also add, which is actually good practice. Actually, let's just test this to see if it works. All we have to do is save it. So let's just go File, Save. Okay, save, Command S or Control S if you're on a PC. And you don't have to close it. It's up to you if you want to or not. We can just switch back to this program. So the way you can tell that it has updated right away is if you go to Move Controls, you can see all the stuff we've added is in there. All right. We can see that the code has updated from our save. It's not just the boilerplate generic default text. So the way this works is if we take this code, this script, we can add it to whatever object we want, okay? Because the object we add it to is what's going to respond to the A key being pressed. All right, so let's say it's the cube in the middle. So I'm going to drag the move controller that we created, move controls, either, let's just put it, I forget, sorry, I got a bad memory. It is cube. So let's just move it to cube like that. And you will see, whoops, let's just do it in here. There it is. Okay, drag and drop it. You will see that it has been added, and there's the public variable showing 2.5 that we've defined in Visual Studio. So that's interesting because now we can go and change it within Unity rather than going back to Visual Studio if we want to experiment with different speeds. So now if we test this, let's just play. You will see if I press the A key, it goes flying out of the window. All right, it actually goes completely off the window. All right, and there's a reason for that. I knew that was going to happen. It's because it is moving so fast. There's so many frames that are loading per second that we actually don't even see it. It just disappears off the screen. It goes so fast. So what we need to do is go back to our code. This was actually what I was going to add, but I didn't because I wanted you to see that first. This is very important. Okay, we don't just times it by player speed. We are also going to add, after vector 3.left, we're going to multiply it by time dot delta time. And if you are not familiar with what delta time is, it basically forces the game to run at a certain speed. Basically, let's say you have a laggy computer, or you experience some lag or whatever, delta time is going to keep everything running at the proper frame rate. Okay, it's going to allow you to move things smoothly regardless of how fast or slow your computer is. Okay, so if you got a bit of lag, like I said, if it's gonna be slow or whatever, this should fix that. So let's save that and let's go back. Okay, and let's just make sure it actually added it. Yeah, time.delta time, and let's play it. It might still be too fast. Okay, but no, there we go. Now when we hit the A key, and it's cool because the objects will react to the physics. You can see the ball starts rolling away, and that I just lost it off the side. All right, but it's really neat because the objects interact with each other exactly as you would expect. So I know this video is getting lengthy, but let's say we wanted to add the other keys to this. Well, we can simply modify the code that we already have. So we can take this entire block, and what we can do is copy. I'm just going to copy and paste it here several times because we need one for W, A, S, and D. So let's do D next because we're doing the left and right. So A and D is left and right. So we're going to put D here as our key that we're looking for. And all we have to change is instead of left, we're going to put right. Okay? Easy. For this one, we're going to put W. And instead of left, I think we're going to put down. I know it's weird because W is up. I think it's down. I remember this one being opposite for whatever reason. And the last one, S. S is going to be up. And if it's wrong, we can always come back here and change it. It's really nothing to swap it. And hit Command S, save it, or Control S. It'll update in here. We've got all our keys now, and let's hit play. And now you can see that this object will move. You know what? It's okay. Up and down, or did I put up and down? Yeah, of course I did. Whoops. Up and down is used for a jump, okay? So now when you're pressing S, it's bouncing around because he's trying to move up. I screwed up. Okay, but that was still cool to see that. All right, it's still cool to learn as we go here. So let's stop that. Let's go back into our code. I used the wrong terms. I was supposed to put back. Oops, I promise I can spell. And forward. Okay, so forward and back. Up and down is literally up and down, like jumping. Okay, so let's save that. So those are the different vector 3s. You got left, right, back, forward, up, and down. Okay, and if we play it now, we should, oh, and I was wrong actually. You know, we do have it opposite. Yeah, you know what? W should be down, up, and yeah, okay, or I mean back. Let's fix that. Want it to work properly. So W should be forward. I knew there was one that's seems wrong to me, seems backwards. And W in my mind should actually be back. But anyways, doesn't matter. Let's save that. And let's play it again. Okay, and now our cube can push the other objects around, and we are controlling an object, and we are well on our way here to our very first game. All right, so you can see how that works quite well. And yeah, that is how we would create a simple script to move an object on our screen. Stick with me to the next one because we are going to get into a lot more fun. All right, so stay tuned.